Welcome everyone, my name is Rigel and today I will be getting into my afterthoughts on the statistics of Eurovision 2022. Now, as you may be able to see on my channel, I've recorded parts including production, semifinal 1, semifinal 2, the grand final, and you can check those out if you want to, but it's absolutely not necessary to do that in order to understand this episode, because this one is literally just gonna be numbers, and numbers. So even if you choose not to watch this part at all, feel free, because I get that statistics isn't really everyone's thing. So, but it interests me, so I'll be talking about it. And in case you want to watch the whole thing in full, I will be editing the whole thing together once I upload the final part. So you can sit through that 5-6 hours if you want to. And as you can probably tell already, this is not scripted, so get ready for random noises like rain, like air conditioning, or my chair squeaking or something like that. So with that being said, let's get right into the statistics. Right, so here's a segment that I originally wasn't planning to do, but I kind of looked back at my Junior Eurovision 2021 Afterthoughts video, and I thought that I probably should do a little part like this, because I do like this kind of stuff, and I understand that you might not. So if you find it boring, I think I'll have some chapter thing that will in the video that you can just skip this segment. But either way, here are some statistics that I found that I also calculated for Eurovision 2022. Some of it comes from myself, some of it comes from other people. For example, here a good chunk of this stuff comes from Sam Ross from ESC Insider, and also the podcast America 12 Points. She actually talked about this stuff on the Eurovision official podcast, and I'm just kind of relaying it here. So so with that out of the way, let's just kind of get into this. Right, so Ukraine got the highest ever televote. Yeah, no, seriously. 439 points out of 468, which is 93.8% of the maximum possible televote. They got, I can't exactly remember this one now, but I think they got 12 points from, 26 countries? Which is insane. And the lowest point they got in televote was, I think, 7 points from Serbia, but every other country gave more than 7 points. So yeah, that's insane actually. So Ukraine got pretty much, I think, one of the highest, not one of the highest, this is the highest televote ever in Eurovision history. And one suspects that it might be a good while until this is beaten. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the previous record was held by Salvador Sobral, Portugal 2017. And obviously, Kalish now have the new record for highest ever televote. So I think this will remain unbeaten for a good while, possibly forever. But I guess we'll just have to see what happens in that regard. But still, yeah, that's an insane televote. I mean, again, 93.8%. That's, again, 26 countries giving 12 points? Yeah, no, that's insane. Speaking of insane, we got the UK doing 26th place to 2nd. That is the largest jump in finals position. Literally last place to 2nd place. I guess you could even say 0 to hero. It would have been even more hero if they had outright won, but of course they didn't. But still, that's a really, really good result for the UK. This is their 16th time now getting 2nd place, which is actually record extending. They already had the record of the largest number of 2nd places in Eurovision, but this, I guess, just extends that further. And Sam Ross also pointed out that 466 points was actually higher than all of their other points since 2010 combined, and even just in the placement, this was their best placement since 1998. Sam also pointed out that for Spain, this was the best placement since 1995. And I also calculated this one myself, but this was a better score than all of their points since 2011 combined. So yeah, really, really good results for both of these big five countries, which you could say have been experiencing kind of a flop era in the last decade or so. But yeah, they're coming back really, really strong. And yeah, and speaking of that, language diversity, let's talk about that as well. We have 4, or depending on how you read it, 5 languages in the top 5, just like 2021. In 2021 we had Italy, we had France, Switzerland, Iceland, and Ukraine. So that adds up to 4 languages. Was it 4 languages? Yeah, 4 languages, because Italian, 2 French songs, 1 English and 1 Ukrainian. That was 2021, by the way. And 2022, we of course have Ukraine, UK, Spain, Sweden, and Serbia. Sorry, that took too long to remember. But that's the Ukrainian language. English, of course, Spanish, again English, and Serbian. So that's 4 languages. But if you also count the verse in Corpore Sano, that's in Latin, you can actually bring that up to 5. And so yeah, language diversity in the top 5. We always celebrate that. And speaking of language, this was by far the best performance of any Lithuanian language song, because you might recall, or actually you might not recall, that the last time Lithuania sent a song in proper Lithuanian was actually on their debut in, I think, 1998 or something like that. Anyway, around that period, they sent a song in the Lithuanian language, which unfortunately did not do so well. And by that, I mean literally nil point. They also sent a song later in a dialect of Lithuanian that is also sometimes considered its own language, so it doesn't really count. But with that, Monica Liu has broken that record wide open by getting a 14th place for Lithuania with a song in the Lithuanian language and 128 points. So yeah, that is by far the best performance for any Lithuanian language song in Eurovision, which is really nice. And let's hope more countries send songs in native languages, and also more Lithuanians send Lithuanian language songs to the national finals. So again, hooray for language diversity. Sam also mentioned Italy's performance as a host country, and this was the best host country performance since 2016, when Sweden got 5th with "If I Were Sorry" by France. If you ask me, I haven't actually seen it, so I have no comment on that song. I should go back and look at it, but I have other things to do. But anyway, getting back to this though, Italy got 6th place, which was the best performance for any host country since 2016. Of course, it's Sweden who got a better result than them, but it's still pretty solid performance, and it's definitely not been too affected by the host country curse. I will say, I said this before actually, that the host country curse does still exist. It, if anything, prevented Italy from getting a win. It didn't get them like Ujardin levels low, but they were not gonna win, and I'm so glad for that. And also, Sam pointed out that Ukraine is now the fourth country to win from the 12th slot in the running order, after 1964, which was Nonoletta, Gigliola, Cinquetti, I think, for Italy, who performed it this year actually as an interval act. 1970, a bit of everything by Dana for Ireland, I think it was, and most recently Arcade in 2019. So yeah, now we have 4 countries which have won from the 12th slot in the running order, so that's pretty cool. And from here, we're going on to some stats that I've gathered myself. It's actually unique this year because, for once, the televote winner is in the first half and the jury vote winner is in the second half. This is very unusual, actually, because if you think about it, usually televote winners tend to be like second half, because, I mean, like, for example, just look at last year, like, Måneskin got 300 something points and they were 24th in the running order slot. So yeah, and the jury vote winner I think was John's Tears, for Switzerland, and he was definitely first half. I think he was 8th for 9th for something like that. And yeah, because this just generally tends to be the case because televote, let's just say that general audiences have a shorter attention span, so recency bias will tend to lead them to later running order slot songs. So that's why usually televote winners are in the second half, and whereas for a jury, earlier songs tend to set the standard for them. So unless they have a song that really beats that standard, songs don't tend to do better in the second half for a jury. So that's why jury vote winners tend to be first half, and televote winners tend to be second half. But this year, that's been the other way around, because we live in extraordinary times, and I guess people just really liked Sam Ryder's performance, in the jury. So yeah, it's a very interesting year for sure. And with that, I also want to talk about the fact that actually the entire top 5 broke their point records. Now that sounds pretty impressive. However, I should also add a huge caveat to this, because this is only under the current point system. When they combine the jury and the televote separately, instead of calculating some aggregate for each country based on the total from that country. So effectively it doubles the points. So that's how when winning songs were getting like 300 something points pre 2016, and then suddenly Salvador Sobral comes in and gets 700 freaking points, that's a result of the current point system. But because of the point system, it means that the entire top 5 has now gotten its best ever result in terms of points. Obviously, Ukraine broke their record because 1944 won with, I think, 500 and something points, 520 something, 30 something, don't remember. And of course they beat that by about 100. The UK, their best ever score was 200 something with Love Shine a Light by Katrina and the Waves. I think it was 227 or something like that. And of course they beat that by more than 200 points. Spain obviously also beat their record. I don't remember exactly what the record was. It might have been Vuelve Conmigo. I can't speak Spanish, as you can probably tell. Yeah, it might have been that. Anyway, obviously Spain also broke their record. I don't think they even gotten 300 points ever. So yeah, they also broke their record by a huge margin. Sweden also broke their record, interestingly enough, but only by the current system, because actually the last time Sweden won was ironically before this rule change, which meant that Måns actually only won Eurovision by with around 300 something points, when in reality, if you add together the jury vote and televote that year, it's actually much more than that, but we'll get to that later. But anyway, yeah, so Mons actually only won around 300 something points, as did Loreen. So Cornelia getting 400 something is actually technically a record for Sweden. So good on her. And also for Serbia as well, Molitva actually famously won with 100 something points. I don't think they even got 200 of that one, which is hilarious. Anyway, yeah, Constractor didn't get a better placement than Molitva, but she certainly got a higher number of points, and the highest ever number of points for Serbia. So that's actually really cool. Yeah, so the entire top 5 actually technically broke their point records. So yeah, that's really interesting. And another thing that's interesting is that this is actually the first ever Eurovision Song Contest with 0 songs that have any French in them. Yeah, I know that sounds weird, but because you might think that haven't France sent non-French songs before? And well, they have. In fact, in 2011, I think France also sent a song. I don't remember if it was in Breton or Corsican or something like that. And also Switzerland was not sending a French song either, so there was no French there, or from Belgium. So yeah, you would have thought that would have been the first time, but for some reason, I haven't watched that edition, so I wouldn't know. But apparently Lithuania sent a song in French, so partly in French, so there was some French language there. So yeah, that's interesting. But this time, for real, is the first time that we have had 0 French in any song, unless you count the French loanwords in English, which we definitely shouldn't. So yeah, first time 0 French in Eurovision. Take that as you will. And also, another thing I want to point out is that this year actually solidified second as the deaf slot in the semifinal, because some people are all saying that third is the actual semifinal deaf slot rather than second, because history. And I guess this year has just kind of proven them wrong. Both Monica Liu and Constractor qualify very comfortably from third place this year, as opposed to the second place countries, which were Latvia and Israel, which, some people had been speculating that the EBU were trying to put them there so that they could break the second slot curse by having something more upbeat that has a little higher of a chance of qualifying to the final. But yeah, that never happened. Neither City Zeni nor Michael Ben David qualified for the finals. So I guess this it weakens third place as the deaf slot in the semifinal, I guess you could call it. And it strengthens or solidifies second place. So yeah, that's some of the statistics. Be assured that I still have a lot more coming your way. And we continue with it's random actually. I kind of just put stuff there whenever I feel like it. But yeah, Zapshi's Doob is actually the first ever qualifiers, first ever free time qualifiers, because they've qualified for Eurovision both in the 2000s, the 2010s, and now most recently the 2020s. Yeah, they've participated 3 times, they've qualified 3 times, which is impressive. Yeah, spanning 3 decades as well. That's amazing. But the same cannot be said for Stoyan Yankulov. You might not know who that is, but he participated in Eurovision, always with some other female singer, actually, the last 2 times. But the first time he qualified, it was in the 2000s as well. The second time he didn't qualify, it was with some female singer named Elitsa, I think. And well, this year, maybe you didn't notice, but he was part of the Intelligent Music Project, I think, as the drummer. And obviously they didn't qualify, so that makes Stoyan Yankelov, I think, the first 2 decades non-qualifier. Well, 2-time non-qualifier spanning 2 decades. So yeah, make of that what you will. I don't think he's gonna return, frankly, but yeah. So some interesting trivia for you, and also I find it interesting that this was actually the first time Romania and Moldova were both in the final since 2017. Of course, in 2017, Romania had sent Yodel It, while Moldova had sent Epic Sax Guy with their song Hey Mama, or something like that, I think. Yeah, they sent that, and yeah, they were both in this final in 2017, and this year that's the same. And similar to 2017, Moldova did better than Romania in the final. So again, make of that what you will. And also, back to the language bit though, this was actually the best Dutch language result since 1998, which was ironically sung by Edcilia. You might know her as Edcilia Rombly, who was actually one of the co-hosts for Rotterdam 2021 and 2020, and because they had actually tried to send a song in Dutch in 2010, but unfortunately they didn't qualify. But this year, obviously, they qualified and they got 11th place with it, so I think that's a really, really good sign for native languages in general, not just Dutch. But maybe we can see even Belgium send a song in the Dutch language as well in the near future. Who knows? But yeah, really good result for native languages, I guess. And speaking of languages, this year we saw the first ever part Latin entry, which was in Corpore Sano. Yeah, in Corpore Sano, there's this, I think it's the last verse, or the last, whatever you call it. The last bit is actually sung in Latin, like right before the last Ishtache Mosat. Before that, they actually sing in Latin, which is very interesting. And actually, I can point out a national final song this year that also had Latin in it a little bit, which was, well, Judy's Yazinki. But it wasn't necessarily so much a song lyric as it was just kind of whispering. It wasn't like a verse or anything, it was just a line, but there was still Latin in it, so that's another reason that I love Yazinki so much. But yeah, getting back to Eurovision now, yeah, Incorporazione was actually the first ever song with some part Latin lyrics, which is very interesting. And also very interesting is the fact that this year we actually saw the first ever winning song that is completely in the Ukrainian language. Ukraine's won 3 times. The first time with Wild Dances by Ruslana, the second time with Jamala in 1944, and the third time now with Stefania and Kalush, or, well, the other way around, you get it. Yeah, but this is actually the first time a Eurovision winning song has been completely in the Ukrainian language, because I didn't even know that Wild Dances actually had any Ukrainian, but I looked up the lyrics and turns out they do. So yeah, there was some Ukrainian in Wild Dances, but not much, and most of it was still in English, and famously Jamala won Eurovision for Ukraine with a song that's not even partly in Ukrainian at all. So yeah, with that we have our first all Ukrainian Eurovision winning song, which wouldn't even happen if it had been Alina Pash who had gone to Eurovision this year, because Shadows of Forgotten Ancestors has English in it. So yeah. Anyway, moving on though, this is actually the best performance for Greece since 2013, when they got 6th place with Alcohol is Free. Yeah, that's not much to say about that. They got 6th place in 2013, and this year they got 8th place, which is really good. Even an improvement from last year, which was already pretty good for recent Greek standards. So yeah, good for them. And not so good for their little brother Cyprus, because another connection to 2013. Now, this is actually the first time. This is the first time Cyprus has non-qualified since 2014. So I guess it's just kind of a curse whenever Greece does well, Cyprus has to non-qualify or something like that. No idea. Anyway, speaking of qualification streaks being broken, we also had a qualification streak of Israel be broken, because the last time they didn't qualify was actually in 2014, and then I remember very vividly some Israeli Eurofan actually wrote on Twitter, and you still think they're gonna non-qualify with this? And well, they did. So I guess it was just a poor choice in their selection. And speaking of non-qualification, this is the first Albanian non-qualification since 2017, and it hurts me to say this because I freaking love Secret. And when it first came out, I thought this was gonna be one of Albania's best results in a while, and then all for it to come crashing down and not even freaking qualify is just kind of sad for me. And again, we're back to the topic of non-qualifications. This is the first Bulgarian non-qualification since 2013. Do note though that they didn't participate in 2014 and 2015. But after that, they've qualified every single year except 2022. I think that's part of the delegation change. I think their head of press named Boris Ivanov, I think his name is, he stopped working for BNT, and now they've got some rando doing this for Bulgaria now, and I guess that just kind of didn't work out for them. So let's see if they do something better next year. Maybe they won't get bribed next year. Who knows? It's a little sad, but we were kind of hyping up a potential Bulgarian win within this decade. But if this delegation continues down the path that it's going on, then it's not looking great for them. And also, on a brighter note, though, we have our first Armenian and Polish and, of course, Romanian qualifications since 2017. Now, I can't really say much about this, mainly because I haven't watched 2017, and the only thing I know about 2017 is that the top 4 are Portugal, Bulgaria, Moldova, and Belgium. Other than that, I don't know much about 2017. I really should go back and watch it, so in any case, good for them, though. They broke their non-qualification streak. And speaking of streaks, this is the second ever Portuguese entry that is majority in English. In 2021, they sent Love Is On My Side, which I believe is actually their first ever song that was entirely in English. They've had songs partly in English before, but mostly still in Portuguese. And this year, Saudade Saudade is actually mostly in English, with one Portuguese verse. So that's they're kind of returning to their roots, if you want to call it that. But I think it goes to show that Portugal doesn't just send songs in Portuguese; they can also send songs in English and still do very well with them. So I think some people don't like this. They think that English is kind of a bad thing in the Portuguese Eurovision entries. But I don't know. I think it works, if you use it right. And I think Mauro and the Black Mamba certainly did. So let's see what happens in Festival da Canção in the coming years, I guess. Maybe people will send more English songs. Maybe they will go back to Portuguese. Who knows? And we continue our statistics with this differences section, let's call it. Let's start with the section with the differences between the semi to the grand final. So for all the non Big Five countries this year, I calculated all the point differences between their semifinal score and also their grand final score. So the biggest differences were from Ukraine, which obviously got a huge score in the grand final, and maybe not so huge a score in the semi. Maybe percentage-wise, it's more in the semi, but anyway, yeah, they got a huge score, but it was still a really big difference. And also, the Czech Republic also got a very huge difference of 189 actually, and I think I think this goes to show that the running order absolutely does matter in terms of getting a good result, because they closed the show in semifinal 2, but they opened the show in the grand final, and I think as a result they were just a little more forgettable in the grand final, and that's why they didn't do so well in the final, unfortunately. I will continue to say that they were robbed until the end of time. And also Armenia, just like Czech Republic, also closed the show in the semifinal, and also went on relatively early in the grand final. So I think it's not surprising, I think, for Armenia that they didn't do so well in the final. So yeah, that's the three biggest point differences between the semi to the final. And the smallest ones were actually from Portugal, Greece, Norway, and Azerbaijan. I'm not surprised about some of these, but I will say, how did Portugal manage to only deviate by 1 point between the final and the grand final? I think the exact figure is 206 and 207. One or the other, I don't remember. I think it was 207 in the final or something like that. Yeah, it was just 1 point off, and I find that to be kind of insane. Greece as well was also very, very close. Norway too, to be honest, I'm surprised about that one. And Azerbaijan, well, yeah, I'm not surprised about that one either. But they did get more of their points, like proportionally, from the jury this time, rather than. Wait, actually, no, they didn't. They actually got 2 points, 3 points from the televote. Yeah, no, they got more points from the televote this time in the final for sure. But it was still tiny for them. So yeah, not a huge difference in general for these four countries. So that's something very interesting to look at as well. Next, we have the differences between the odds and the final placement, and I didn't find this one. I couldn't bother to calculate it, if I'm being honest. I got it from a YouTube channel named Say Eurovision. You can find their video just by checking their channel. And the biggest differences were actually from Lithuania. They actually got a placement 11 places higher than what they were predicted to get, because they were actually predicted to come dead last in the odds, but of course she defied that and got 14th place. And I think that I remember that in the semifinals, like before the semifinals happened, I think Lithuania was all the way down near like 39 as well, which is insane. I don't know why the odds were like underestimating this so much, but yeah, I guess we're just really happy that it qualified, and actually surprisingly comfortably at that. So yeah, I'm really happy that she qualified and actually didn't do terribly with a Lithuanian language song that is a little bit more low key. Yeah, just really happy for her. And also Finland was actually kind of a flop, as you can see here. 9 places off actually. I guess people were just betting on Finland because it was the Rasmus, and not knowing about the big names effect in Eurovision, I guess. And also Portugal was actually a bit underrated by the odds as well. They I can't say anything specific about this one, but I think people weren't betting on this one as much because again, a more low key song, so people feared that it would get lost and just didn't bet on it as much. So yeah, she defied the odds in that sense. So good for Morrow, good for Portugal. Yeah, and speaking of placements of differences of 7, we also have Germany and the Czech Republic, which also were 7 places off from their odds, but the other way around. I'm actually surprised about Germany because I thought people would bet on Germany to be last place, but I guess they didn't. But again, I still maintain that the Czech Republic was robbed. But I don't know why people weren't betting on Germany for last place. So yeah, that's the biggest differences between the odds and their final placement in the grand final. The smallest differences, however, came from Estonia, Netherlands, Spain, and Ukraine, which the odds all predicted to be in the spot that they eventually got. Ukraine was the overwhelming favorite to win, and obviously they did win. Spain was predicted to get third. I think actually, Spain was predicted to get third, but they actually, if from what I remember at least, they were predicting Sweden to get second rather than the UK. Even though most bettors are actually British, but whatever. I'm still sad that Cornelia didn't get top 3, but whatever. That's not the point here. They predicted that the Netherlands would come 11th, and sure enough, S10 did. And Estonia did eventually get 13th place, as was predicted by the odds. Which, good for him, good for Estonia. And with that, let's move on to biggest placement changes between 2021 and 2022. So, I took all the finalist countries that were in 2021 and also 2022, and I calculated the biggest rises, the biggest drops, and also the ones that changed the least. And the biggest changes we have here are, the UK, obviously, going from last place to second. Spain also, second to last. Actually, no, third to last. And then, third. And then the Netherlands coming fourth to last to 11th, which was also really good, a 12th place increase. And also Sweden and Serbia actually increased the same amount. Ironically, they were both they were 14th and 15th, and this year they came 4th and 5th. So, ride or die, am I right? But of course, with glow-ups, we also have flops, especially France. We kind of knew that whoever France sent probably wouldn't be able to replicate Barbara Pravi's success, but we just didn't expect it to be this much of a flop. We expected Fulan would get maybe like 10 to 15 or at least 10 to 20, but that didn't happen, not even close. And Iceland also flopped, but I guess that's not so much a flop as much as the fact that they even qualified in the first place. So yeah, I don't know if that's really a flop because people didn't even expect us to qualify. So the fact that they qualified enough is miraculous. So yeah, good for them. And also Finland. I'm not surprised about this one either. Again, it's the big name effect in the grand final, which usually doesn't work in the favor of most countries. Some people were like, oh, they could win because they're Erasmus, they're experienced or whatever. No, that's not how it works. They have to be new, they have to be innovative, and I just think Jezebel wasn't either of those. So, I'm not really surprised about this one, and also not surprised about Switzerland. Again, just like Iceland, I think we were just surprised that it qualified in the first place. And, we kind of had the feeling that whatever Switzerland sent this year probably wouldn't be able to do as well as John's tiers, and sure enough, that's exactly what happened. We do also have countries that didn't change in placement at all between 2021 and 2022. And the first one is, Germany, which is kind of, I want to say disappointing, because like they got second to last year, and then this year they came just outright last place. But they're both 25. So I guess that's no change there. Consistency and all that, and also Belgium also got the same placement as they did in 2021, where I think Twitter consensus is that last year they were robbed and this year they were overrated. So make of that what you will. I'm still confused at how Belgium even managed to qualify in the first place, but it's happened now, so we can't really do anything about it. And with that, let's move on to differences between the televote and the jury. Now, obviously, the televote really liked Ukraine, and the jury, while they did like it, fourth place isn't bad at all, but obviously less so. So, there's a pretty huge gap there. There's also a pretty huge gap with Moldova and Serbia. That's reasonable, I guess. Those two are, televote magnets, which means they tend to do more poorly with the jury. So not really surprised about those. But the smallest differences came from Iceland, France, and Spain. Now, Iceland's kind of funny because, again, I've already pointed this out in the grand final slide, but Iceland actually got 10 points from both the jury and the televote, so that means they got 20 points total, and that means they got exactly the same number of points from both ends of the votes. And France also got a very similar vote, and also similarly low vote from both ends. So, of course, the clear exception here is Spain, which got third place in both jury and televote, and of course, eventually third place in the final ranking. And but it was all in like the 220 range. So yeah, that's a huge standout there compared to the other two, which both ended at the bottom of the scoreboard, as opposed to Spain. And also, I calculated the ranking in terms of the televote jury difference. The largest one was Moldova. Again, are you really surprised? And the smallest was Spain. Again, are you really surprised? Third place in both, so there's no difference in the ranking. So these are some differences between jury and televote, and also 2022 to 2021. And also odds and final and semi to final. Differences in those regards. And if you thought the statistics were over, then you are wrong. Because we are continuing with this section, which I guess I'll call the jury section, because there's a couple of jury-related trivia items in here. But first, let's start with the average ranking. Now, I also did this for Jury Eurovision 2021, so it makes sense that I do this now for Eurovision 2022. I removed Germany because they are slot 13, and I calculated the average ranking of each half, and I found that the first half had an average ranking of 13.5, while the second half had an average ranking of 11.5, meaning that in general the second half was actually a stronger half, which makes sense, I guess. 3 out of the top 5 were actually in the second half, so it makes sense. So let's move on. Another thing that I find kind of funny is that Greece actually got more 12 points in the jury than both Sweden and Ukraine, in the grand final, of course, but ended up below both of them in the overall ranking, and even below Sweden in the jury. So, again, back to the thing where Twitter Greek Euro fans were shouting about Cornelia not knowing how to sing, and then at the end, Greece still ends up below Sweden in the jury vote. And also, I noticed that for whatever reason, Estonia did not give a single point to Ukraine in the jury vote, because I was like before the contest, I was discussing with people who would get 12 points from who, and someone told me that the 12 points from the Baltic countries were pretty much locked for Ukraine. But then, obviously that happened with Latvia and Lithuania, but imagine my surprise when I saw that Estonia had not given a single point to Ukraine, and also not a single point to Sweden at that point. So I was thinking the 12 points would probably go to either Sweden or Ukraine, and turns out it was going to go to Sweden. So, mixed feelings there, but yeah, I'm happy that Cornelia got more points, for sure. But one thing that I find really weird this year is that there were actually no 12-point exchanges in the jury, at least as far as I'm concerned. For example, like Spain gave 12 to Azerbaijan, but Azerbaijan gave 12, nominally to the UK, and also, Sweden also gave 12 to Spain, but Spain, again, gave 12 to Azerbaijan. So again, I couldn't notice any actual 12-point exchanges in the final, and obviously, Cyprus isn't there to receive 12 from Greece, so Greece had to give 12 to Azerbaijan, and again, Azerbaijan nominally gave 12 to the UK, which gave its 12 to Sweden, but Sweden didn't give 12 to UK, etc., etc. So yeah, I couldn't notice any 12-point exchanges in the jury. Let me know if you do, because at least I couldn't find any. And even in the televote, there weren't any either, except for one, which was, Ukraine-Poland, which, given the current situation, makes a whole lot of sense. So yeah, fair enough there. And also, speaking of the jury, and Sweden actually got 16 out of 20 of the 12 points in semifinal 2, versus only 5 12 points in the finals. That makes sense because there were some stronger acts that weren't in semifinal 2, like obviously Spain and UK were also very jury friendly. While in contrast, Ukraine actually got only 12 out of 20 of the 12 points in the televote in semifinal 1, but they got 28 12 points in the final. I said 26 earlier. No, it's 28. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. I'm not really sure how to comment on it. And also, this year, Eurovision made history because Azerbaijan was the first country to ever qualify with 0 televote points. Yes, I'm serious. Azerbaijan qualified for the grand final with not even a single point in the televote. So yeah, that's a I guess you can start a new term for this. Call it an Adirus Demli, Yeah, it's just they got 90 something points in the jury and then 0 points in the televote, which is still kind of insane if you ask me. But yeah, every year Eurovision creates history, and I guess this year's history is a country qualifying with 0 televote points. And it's also notable this year because it's actually the first time Russia has been absent from Eurovision since 1999. It's not not necessarily the same as withdrawing, because actually for Kyiv 2017 they actually had planned an act, but obviously Ukrainians weren't gonna let the Russians in, so they withdrew instead. And before that, though, they had attended pretty much every single audition since the 2000s. And before that, they had also participated like 3 times, I think, 1994 to 96 or something like that. ironically including the one and only Philip Kirkorov, but that's a story for another day. Anyway, yeah, Russia hasn't been absent in Eurovision since 1999. They had withdrawn, but they hadn't been absent necessarily in 2017. But still, yeah, it is monumental, and I think at the very least, Russia will remain out for at least the next couple of years, maybe even a decade. Yeah, so let's just see what happens. I think Belarus is going to be out for quite a while as well. So again, let's just see what happens. This year also made history in a negative way, though, because this was the first time in at least a while, I think. I don't know exactly how far back because I haven't watched that many Eurovisions. But I do know that last year, in I think semifinal 1, Duncan Lawrence performed a different rendition of Arcade. But this year, notably, Måneskin have not performed Zitia Boni. You know, they performed their new song named Supermodel in the final, and that was great, and it was a bop, but it's not Zitia Boni. And it's kind of, if you ask me, it's a little bit disrespectful even of Eurovision traditions. You know, it doesn't matter how busy you are. Come on, you can. It's just like 3 minutes. You can sing a song once. That's fine, please. So yeah, I think it's a little disrespectful. No matter how busy you are, no matter how many VMAs you have to go to later, yeah, it's just a little disrespectful if you ask me. So yeah, that's a little unfortunate. And also unfortunate is the fact that Montenegro actually continues its streak of never qualifying with English language songs. You know, when I first heard Breathe, I thought maybe that would change because, you know, I looked at their qualification record, and so far their qualifications have all been songs in Montenegrin, most notably Adio, or Audio. I have no idea how you pronounce it, but whatever. You know, that was one of the songs that they sent in Montenegrin, and obviously that qualified for the final. And I thought that maybe they would qualify with Breathe because it sounded pretty credible. Not incredible, credible. Yeah, it sounded pretty credible, and I thought they would qualify with this, even though it was in English. But yeah, I guess that just wasn't the case. You know, it was harmed by the running order, and also Vladana's vocals weren't really on point. So yeah, I guess this continues Montenegro's streak of not qualifying with English language songs. Let's see if that changes in the future, assuming they still participate in the next couple of years or so. I think they will, but yeah, let's just see what happens. And we're still not done with the statistics. Again, if you were you feel bored by this stuff, you know, you can just skip to the next section right now. Absolutely fine with that. I don't mind. I'm just a huge statistics nerd, so I just like looking at this stuff. But in that case, let's just continue. So let's look at the semi-final winners and, well, losers, I guess. This is the second time now Slovenia has ended last in their semi-final, and the third time Georgia has ended last in their semi-final. So I think they probably need to maybe rethink their selection approaches. Or maybe not, who knows, maybe just, you know, do your own thing. But I will say Georgia definitely takes junior Eurovision a lot more seriously than they do adult Eurovision, for sure. I mean, as we speak right now, their huge selection named Ranina is going on for junior Eurovision. So yeah, let's just see what happens there. But back to adult Eurovision, though. This is the second time Ukraine has won their semi-final, and actually the fifth time Sweden has won their semi-final. So yeah, you can clearly see that there's experience on both ends, I guess. And I also did some calculations and some counting for this, but in fact, actually, for this next bit, I actually coded a little thing to help my data input be a little easier. I decided to separate the countries in the grand final into different regions, which were Western Europe, Eastern Europe, Mediterranean, Balkan, which basically just means Serbia, and Northern Europe, and also the Caucasus plus Australia, because I couldn't figure out how else to really group Australia. But I calculated it, and the strongest regions were Eastern Europe plus the Baltics. I counted the Baltics into Eastern Europe, because they are. But if you want to separate it, I'm pretty sure the Estonia and Lithuania add up to 269 points. So you can just subtract it yourself, see what happens. It's all another really strong region is the Mediterranean. Spain, Greece, Portugal, etc. With 1,149 points there. Western Europe had 724 points. Northern Europe 678, and we also have the weakest regions here, which were Central Europe 267 points, which was basically just Switzerland, Czech Republic, and Poland added together, which gives us 267 points. And the Caucasus plus Australia only added up to 292 points, which is kind of why I put Australia there, because otherwise it would be even lower than that. And the Baltics alone, like I said earlier, was 269 points, and the Balkans, which just means Serbia, basically, 312, of course. These are the weakest regions technically, but again, one of those regions is literally just one country. So what can you say? Anyway, this next bit I also took a really long time to do. Actually, I had done this counting for like 2 hours straight, just looking through the archives on the Eurovision.tv website, and I had to just basically go through every single country to see how many jury members ranked a certain country first and a certain country last. So the countries that were ranked first by the most jurors were the UK, which got 28 out of 170. That number is weird, but this also doesn't count the jurors from Georgia, Azerbaijan, Montenegro, because they were cheating and stuff, so they got a new score made up by the EBU. So they didn't count those, so we're just at 170 here. Anyway, the UK got 28 first places, Sweden got 24, Ukraine got 22, and Spain got 21, which is pretty similar to the actual jury results, except of course Spain is higher than Ukraine. So make it at what you will. But also, very interestingly, actually I should point out that Serbia was ranked first by 10 jurors, which is interesting because Serbia also got ranked last by 24 jurors alongside Moldova. 22 jurors ranked France last, 20 Romania, and 18 Iceland. Yeah, not really surprising with these as well. Again, it just goes to show how polarizing, I guess, Incorporisano can be. So, these are some interesting stats that I thought might be interesting. And in this slide, we focused mostly just on this contest. But in the next slide, I'm going to be looking at stuff that's more affecting kind of like the general trend and how it compares to other more, I guess, equivalent contests, and see, I guess, how they pair up. So a couple of days ago, I saw this diagram that the Twitter account Eurovisionario put out on their profile, which basically covers every single highest, top 45 highest jury plus televote scores. Basically, kind of just like calculating the scores of various high scoring countries in different years if they were calculated with the current post 2015 system. And in this top 45, it was found that there were only 4 new additions to this highest ranking, which were, as you might expect, the top 4 of Eurovision 2022. With in particular actually Spaceman, Slow Mo, and Hold Me Closer actually rounding out the top 20, all at 18 to 20 actually, all 3 of them just side by side. So I think that's pretty interesting. And on the topic of that diagram though, it was found that Stefania was actually the 4th highest total score ever, and actually the 6th ever score that is above 600. As we know, Armarpilisch Deutsch got 758, but with this new calculation, it was actually found that Fairy Tale got 690, Euphoria got 639, Heroes got 625, and of course we know that Beautiful Mess got 615, and in the middle we have Stefania with 631. So that's again the 6th ever score to reach to exceed 600 points. And I also did this calculation myself, but they actually, with Stefania, they actually got the 3rd highest score per country, which is basically just kind of taking the score and then dividing it by the total number of countries in the contest minus 1. So, for example, this year it would be 631 divided by 40 minus 1, because obviously you can't vote for yourself. So, and with that, I kind of worked out the highest score per countries, or score per capita, I guess you would call it. The highest is still Armarpilisch Deutsch, and also Fairy Tale is above it. But interestingly, Euphoria wasn't actually that high, but Stefania was very high, higher than Heroes, higher than Euphoria, and also higher than Beautiful Mess. And I'm not even gonna show Zetia Boni here because it just frankly wasn't that high at all. And also I decided to kind of just calculate the total number of points held by the top 5 since 2016. So and I found that actually 2022 had the 2nd highest total top 5 tally since the rule change in 2016. 2017 actually had 2,454 points between the entire top 5, which again I can't remember 5th place, but it was Portugal, Bulgaria, Moldova, Belgium, and one more country. I can't remember the 5th one. I'm sorry, I haven't watched it. But between those 5 countries, we had 2,454 points, with in particular the top 2 alone taking up 1,300 points or something like that. Anyway, yeah, this actually was taking up 81.366% of the entire available amount of points in that year, which is insane. But 2022 was also really high as well. Stefania, Spaceman, Slow Mo, Hold Me Closer, and Incorporisano added up to a whopping 2,306 points, which took up 79.517% of the total number of available points. If you want to calculate that, it's just 40 times 58, which if you want to calculate it again, 58 is basically just like 12, 10, 8, 7 down to 1 times 2, because televote and jury vote, and then times that by 40, and voila, you get the total count. I can't remember the number now, but anyway, yeah, 2022 the top 5 actually took up almost, as you can see here, almost 80% of the total top 5 tally, which is insane. And after that, we have 2021, where Zetia Boni, Voila, Tout l'Univers, 10 years, and Shum took up 2,104 points, which was approximately 72.845% of the available total points. It goes to show that even despite the huge number of points that Ukraine had incurred, I guess, it still was a really, really strong top 5 this year that took up most of the points that were available. And also, speaking of the top 5, this is the highest ever 4th place score. Cornelia got 438 points for Sweden, and the previous highest 4th place score was actually 378 when in Iceland 2021 with Duffy and Gagnamanov, when they got 378 points with 10 years. Some people were thinking that maybe the 4th place would never break the 400 points threshold, but I guess they were proven wrong this year, with Cornelia getting 438 points. Again, cough cough, goes to show she was robbed, cough cough. Anyway, with that, this means that this is the first ever Eurovision Song Contest where the entire top 4 got more than 400 points, which is insane. And a final note, if Eurovision 2023 is indeed not hosted in Ukraine due to, say, safety concerns, this will be the first Eurovision since 1980 which was not hosted in the winning country. Previously there were cases where sometimes the winning country is too small to host Eurovision, like Monaco that one year. I don't remember which year it was, to be honest, but one year Monaco actually won Eurovision, but the year after that, they're too small to host. But the UK hosted, I think, in Edinburgh, I think. I'm starting to ramble now, but in 1979, Israel won Eurovision, ironically, on home ground, actually. But then the year after that, they were like, we can't afford this, and in fact didn't even participate, and they actually withdrew from Eurovision that year, and instead it was hosted, the contest the year after that, in 1980, was actually hosted in the Netherlands, in The Hague. If Eurovision 2023 is also not going to be hosted in, say, I don't know, Kyiv or Lviv, then this will also be the first time since 1980 when the winning country doesn't host Eurovision. So that's I guess something to look out for. I don't know. And those are just some of the statistics of Eurovision 2022. Let me know what you think of them in the comments below. Like this video if you enjoyed my commentary. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next and final part where I'll be talking about the gossip and my final thoughts on Eurovision 2022, as well as what's next for Eurovision in the near future. Again, you can check out the previous parts that I've uploaded on my channel, and I'll see you next time.